Welcome to the Cheating and Love Tales channel. I press the button on the old dictaphone and hear a faint click. My heart is pounding in my ears, and suddenly, I'm overwhelmed by how cold my fingertips feel against the metal casing. Fear. It's a quiet terror, like a trembling shadow that's been with me for so long I sometimes forget it's there, until it grips me by the throat. Tonight, I'm recording this because I want a record of what I've done and what I'm about to do. I need to set these words down before they tear me apart. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 38, but I feel at least a decade older. I suppose that's what betrayal does. Or maybe it's the knowledge that the blame isn't purely on her shoulders. See, I was the one who handed her the keys to her freedom. I was the one who said, "Go ahead, Kathy. Take a break. Live a little." And I convinced myself I could handle it. I lied. And now, here I sit, haunted by everything I saw, everything I heard, and everything that's still lodged deep in my chest. Buddy, my golden retriever, is curled up on the couch by the fireplace, his eyes half-lidded as he dozes in that dog way, half alert, half dreaming. Normally, his presence comforts me, but not tonight. Tonight, every sound in the house feels like an intrusion. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant pop of the heating vents, even the hush of the winter wind outside. Everything reminds me of her, of him, of us, of what used to be, and what can never be again. I think of fear, specifically the fear that maybe I deserve this, her betrayal, his intrusion, because I wasn't enough. The fear that maybe I'm just as much the traitor to our marriage as they are. Because for years, I played the role of the supportive husband who never asked too many questions, never probed too deep, and never insisted on hearing the answers that might shatter my illusions. Fear, it's an anchor that keeps you stuck even when you know you should leave. I take a deep breath and press the record button on the dictaphone again. "This is for you, Kathy," I say, my voice echoing in the silence of the living room. "And maybe for me too." Then I let the memory wash over me, the one that started it all, at least in earnest. The funeral parlor. It was a Tuesday, just past 3 in the afternoon. The funeral parlor was colder than I expected, smelling of lilies, old wood, and something faintly medicinal. The hush felt heavy, like a weighted blanket over everyone's thoughts. Kathy stood near the casket, her hands clasped, her eyes rimmed with red. We weren't at a relative's funeral. It was her old coworker, someone she respected enough to pay her respects in person. I offered to accompany her, because that's what husbands do, right? I didn't realize Justin Cooper would be there. I barely knew the man at the time, just a freelance consultant Kathy had mentioned once or twice. Something about him helping her school's administrative board with marketing strategies. He was in the corner, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. And when Kathy noticed him, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. A spark of recognition, maybe relief. She walked right over. I followed a few steps behind, unsure if I was interrupting or intruding. As I got closer, I realized I was watching something intimate, something that should have been private. Their heads bent close, their voices hushed. She placed a hand on his shoulder, and he pressed his palm over hers. There was a softness to the gesture that twisted my gut. I told myself, they're just friends. She's comforting him. After all, we were at a funeral. Emotions run high. But then she whispered, "Only you are my support." And she whispered loud enough for half the room to hear, or maybe I just imagined that part. Every nerve in my body went rigid. My ears buzzed with the sound of my own pulse. I could practically feel the gazes of the other mourners flick in my direction. A few frowns, a couple of raised eyebrows, and one sympathetic look from an older lady in the pew behind me. My cheeks burned. My chest tightened. She didn't mean me. That was the gut punch. She should have meant me, her husband, but she said it to him. I shut my eyes, swallowing the shame that rose like bile. Kathy turned, realized I was standing there, and gave me a fleeting look. Part confusion, part apology, part frustration. Then she slid her hand away from Justin's shoulder. The next few minutes blurred. I might have made small talk, maybe nodded a few times. My pride was buried in that funeral parlor along with her coworker. I could feel it suffocating under the weight of embarrassment. I remember thinking, I hope this is just a weird emotional slip. But I knew, deep in my bones, that this moment was a crack in the foundation of our marriage, one I'd chosen not to see for too long. QRHCK's NDE Foundation back home. I tried to forget it. I tried focusing on my job at the logistics firm, delegating tasks to my team, overseeing shipments, updating spreadsheets. But every time my mind wandered, it went back to that moment. The way Kathy's voice sounded, gentle and full of warmth for him. And that phrase, "Only you are my support." For a while, I told myself I was overreacting. It was an emotional day, right? Funerals make people say strange things. I'd catch myself replaying the scene of the funeral parlor, dissecting every nuance. Maybe she was just tired. Grief does that. Maybe Justin was just an old friend who needed solace. But a persistent, gnawing voice in my head reminded me of how distant she'd been the past few months, how quickly she would shut her laptop whenever I walked into the room, how often she'd say she needed some space to breathe. That voice in my head grew louder, eventually turning into an obsession. I started keeping mental notes of her subtle changes, the way she'd check her phone more frequently, the vague excuses about staying late at the school, the slight tremor in her voice when she said she was going to the gym, but never came back sweaty. I noticed how she'd slip off to the bedroom to take certain phone calls, and how she seemed to resent the simple question, "Who was that?" Maybe this was my fault. Months earlier, I had jokingly told her, "You should go out with your girlfriends more. I don't want to stifle you. Taste some freedom." I said it because I thought we were stable enough for that. I wanted her to be happy, to be free of regrets. But her brand of freedom had taken a direction I never anticipated. And I was responsible. I told her it was okay, that we could handle it. I never expected it to lead to him, Justin Cooper. One evening, after a silent dinner, I found myself awake in bed while Kathy dozed beside me. The glow of the digital clock read 2:13 a.m. She was lying on her side, her breathing soft, her arms curled up near her face. She looked peaceful, like the woman I married, the woman who used to greet me with a bright smile whenever I came home from work. I leaned over, gently brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and wondered if she still loved me, or if she just couldn't figure out how to leave. I could feel the guilt building inside me, guilt for not talking to her sooner, for not bridging the distance that had grown between us, for letting her loneliness fester until she turned to someone else. And that guilt fed a quiet anger, which in turn became a kind of numb resolve. If she was betraying me, I needed proof. Because to this day, I still wanted to cling to the possibility that I was wrong, that maybe we could fix things, that maybe her words at the funeral were just a momentary lapse. So I started paying more attention. I asked questions. I watched her reactions. And little by little, I saw the truth forming like a dark silhouette on the horizon. The confession. It was a Sunday afternoon. We were sitting on the couch, side by side, watching a rerun of some sitcom. She had the remote, flipping absently through channels. I stared at her profile, the curve of her cheek, the way her eyebrows furrowed slightly in concentration, even when she was just channel surfing. That day, I decided I couldn't keep tiptoeing around the subject. I turned the TV off. "Kathy," I said, my voice quieter than I intended, "I need to ask you something." She placed the remote on the coffee table and looked at me. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. My palms were already clammy. "Is there something you want to tell me? Something about you and Justin Cooper?" For a second, her eyes flickered, a quick spark of surprise that she tried to hide. "Why would you? What do you mean?" I explained how I'd noticed the phone calls, the sudden interest in working late, the changed passwords on her social media. I didn't accuse her outright. I just listed off the details like bullet points in a presentation, half hoping she'd deny them convincingly. But she didn't. Instead, she pressed her lips together and shut her eyes as if bracing herself for a punch. Then she confessed. Not all of it, not in detail, but enough. She said they started talking more often after a school fundraiser, that he was easy to confide in, that she felt seen by him in ways she hadn't felt in a while. It's just emotional, she insisted. We talked about our problems, about the emptiness I've been feeling. She paused, then whispered, I needed someone, Mike. That felt like a knife. But I had to know. Did you, and he ever? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I recognized the truth. The rawness of it hit me so hard that I actually slumped forward. Elbows on my knees, hands gripping my hair. Kathy touched my back. But I flinched away. Every cell in my body burned with betrayal. In that moment, a strange calm settled over me, just for a heartbeat, right before anger coursed through my veins. She started crying. She tried to explain, to justify, or maybe to apologize. I didn't know. My ears were ringing, and my throat was so tight I could barely breathe. The only thing I managed to say was, I can't do this right now. Then I stood up and walked out the door, letting it slam behind me. Outside, in the late afternoon light, everything felt surreal. I got into my truck and drove aimlessly for hours, the sky changing from pale blue to pinkish dusk, to the deep black of night. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, staring at a cup of coffee that went cold before I even took a sip. That's when I felt something inside me crack. I tried to breathe through it, but it was like an iron band tightening around my chest. IV. Discovering the truth in the days that followed, the tension between us felt like a coiled spring. Kathy tiptoed around the house, apologized, pleaded with me to talk, to work things out. I resented the idea that we even needed to work things out. This wasn't a mutual failure, or so I told myself at the time. It was her choice, her betrayal. But the confession I'd forced out of her didn't stop the nightmares, the swirl of doubt and anger. I needed something more concrete, something to confirm the images tormenting me. The two of them together, locked in a forbidden embrace. I hated myself for thinking it. I hated her for making it plausible. And more than all of that, I hated how part of me still wanted to protect her, to shield her even from my own rage. So I did the unthinkable. I snooped. I waited until she was in the shower one morning and used the few minutes to pick up her phone from the nightstand. My hand shook as I tried a few passcodes, birthdays, our anniversary, even a random guess, until one of them worked. Her phone opened. My stomach churned with a mix of triumph and guilt. Then I saw the messages, streams of them. Some were innocuous, but others held an unmistakable tone. It wasn't just emotional. They talked about places they'd met when I was at work, the feel of each other's skin, lines that made my stomach twist in disgust. I scrolled, hardly breathing, hands clammy, feeling more detached with each passing second. There were photos, nothing full-blown explicit, but enough to confirm my worst suspicions. Her bedroom, that's our damn bed, I realized with a horror so profound it felt cold. My knees nearly gave out. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the phone screen, my vision blurred by tears I refused to let fall. That was the proof. That was the tangible reality of Kathy's affair with Justin Cooper. I heard the shower shut off. Panicking, I locked the phone, placed it back exactly where it was, and headed to the kitchen. I needed to pretend that everything was normal until I figured out what to do, and yet, all I could think was, she let him into our house. She took him to our bed. The heartbreak was so total, it was like trying to breathe underwater. Of betrayal. A week later, my suspicions turned into something I can never unsee. I had come home early from work, taking a half day under the pretense of having errands to run. In truth, I just couldn't stand the office that day. My mind was too filled with images of them. My boss said I looked sick. And maybe I did. I remember how the midday sun seemed too bright, how I had a headache throbbing at my temples. All I wanted was some quiet, maybe to collapse on the couch and stare at the wall. I turned the key in the front door lock, stepping inside. The house was oddly silent. Buddy, who normally greeted me at the door, was nowhere to be seen. I set my bag down carefully, as if not to disturb the hush. Then I heard it. Soft laughter and a hushed voice from the bedroom. My heart kicked into high gear, pounding so hard it hurt. I walked slowly, each step on the hardwood floor feeling like a gunshot in my ears. My hands were trembling, and a cold sweat slicked my forehead. The bedroom door was ajar. I heard Kathy's voice, low and intimate, say something I couldn't quite make out. Then I heard a man's voice, Justin's voice, respond. For a split second, a wave of dizziness overtook me. I literally had to place a hand against the wall. Then I pushed the door open with the gentlest nudge, and what I saw confirmed every fear, every suspicion. They were there, on our bed. Her hair was mussed, her face flushed, and his hands were on her as though he owned her. The sheet had slipped down, exposing enough to give me a nauseating sense of their closeness, the reality of their coupling. It's a strange thing, seeing such a betrayal with your own eyes. Part of me wanted to cry out, to roar in anger, or to lash out physically. Another part of me felt numb, like I was watching a scene in a movie, disembodied, emotionless. I could even see the dust motes in the air, illuminated by a beam of sunlight through the curtains. It must have taken them a couple of seconds to register my presence. Kathy gasped, pulling the sheet over herself, stammering my name. Justin cursed under his breath, scrambling to cover up as well. My mind was spinning. They were both so silent, except for their ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. I can't recall if I said anything. I think I might have just stood there, fists clenched, mouth open, while my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. Finally, I managed to croak, "Get out." Justin grabbed his clothes, pants halfway on, shoes in his hand, stammering apologies that sounded more like excuses. Kathy was wrapped in the sheet, tears filling her eyes, begging me to let her explain, to understand. But I didn't want to hear it. I repeated, "Get out," my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Justin tried to lay a hand on my shoulder as he brushed past me, but I jerked away. I heard him mutter something like, "I'm sorry," and then he was gone. Left alone in that room with Kathy, I felt years of our marriage unravel in a single moment. The bed was still in disarray, the smell of sex lingering in the air. My hand curled into a fist so tight my knuckles ached. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it," I whispered. My voice was hollow, almost foreign. "Not now," she sobbed, reaching out for me, but I backed away. The anger inside me was so potent, I was afraid I might hurt her if I stayed. Instead, I turned and left without another word, slamming the bedroom door so hard I heard the frame crack. The old Indies, I should have walked out for good right then. But I didn't, because a part of me, the part that clung to the memory of the woman I once loved, still believed maybe we could salvage something. Or maybe I was just a coward, too afraid to blow up my entire life. Kathy tried to talk to me every day after that. She cried, apologized, told me she felt lonely, isolated, that I'd become distant. She poured out confessions that I didn't want to hear. I was confused, Mike. I thought you'd stopped loving me. She said it so often that I started to question my own reality. Was this somehow my fault? Did I push her into his arms? The guilt gnawed at me. But then images of that scene on our bed would flood my mind. Her bare skin against his, her expression of intimacy, the shame in her eyes when she noticed me. I couldn't shake that visual. In the nights that followed, I found myself trembling with fury under the covers, while she lay next to me in a restless sleep, or sometimes on the couch, because she couldn't stand the tension between us. When we did speak, I'd lash out in anger, hurling harsh words about betrayal, about filth, about how she disgusted me. Then I'd catch sight of the fear in her eyes, and I'd feel an odd pang of remorse, like I was punishing not just her but myself. That's the twisted thing about love and betrayal. They're so tightly bound that hurting her meant hurting me too. VYI. Birth a day forgotten amid all this, life carried on. Bills needed paying. Buddy needed feeding and walking. Work demanded my attention. And days turned into weeks, with Kathy still living in the house, an uneasy, silent truce hanging between us. We avoided each other's gaze most mornings, made small talk about groceries or laundry, anything to avoid the raw subject that loomed over us. I forgot her birthday. Or maybe I just refused to acknowledge it. Kathy had always been the one who remembered birthdays, anniversaries, even the date of our first kiss. She thrived on those details. And I suppose that's why. The night of her birthday, when I came home late from work, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a single candle flickering in the dim. A slice of cake half eaten in front of her. A pained look in her eyes. "You forgot," she said softly, as though stating a simple fact, not an accusation. I stood there, exhausted and numb, my briefcase in one hand. Part of me wanted to say, "Of course I forgot. You betrayed me." Another part felt a twinge of guilt, recalling how meticulously she'd celebrated my birthday every year. Small presents, a card hidden under my pillow, a surprise dinner. But I was too hardened by resentment to offer an apology. So I just shrugged. "I've had a lot on my mind." She nodded, tears glistening. "I guess we both have." I set my briefcase down and stared at the candle flame. In that moment, I realized just how fractured we were. We'd gone from lovers to strangers. And there she was, on her birthday, alone with a slice of cake. Something inside me twisted, something that resembled pity or regret. But I didn't know how to cross the chasm between us anymore. I went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and retreated to the living room without another word. I heard her blow out the candle. That small sound felt like a punctuation mark on what little remained of our marriage. VII. The LETER and TEALIBI. Over the next few weeks, I found myself drafting a letter. Notes typed on my phone, scribbles on the backs of receipts, trying to capture the swirl of emotions that kept me awake at night. It felt like a half confession, half condemnation of her, of me, of us. I kept rewriting, discarding, rewriting again. I needed an outlet for this pain that was devouring me from the inside out. Meanwhile, fate served up an opportunity for revenge. Justin Cooper got into some serious trouble. Something about a business deal gone awry, possibly fraud. I heard the rumors through a mutual acquaintance, then discovered the man was facing possible charges. It turned out he needed an alibi for a date and time that, unfortunately for him, coincided with one of his many rendezvous with Kathy. He approached me one day outside the grocery store. The audacity was surreal. "Mike, wait up," he called, jogging over to where I was loading groceries into my truck. I turned, my heart pounding with disdain. He looked anxious, shadows under his eyes. "What do you want?" He cleared his throat. I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need your help." He paused, struggling to find words. "I need you to tell the authorities that that I was meeting you that day, discussing some consulting work." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "You want me to lie for you?" He nodded, eyes flicking nervously over my face. "I know it's a lot to ask, but Kathy said maybe you'd do it, to protect her reputation, to keep her name out of this." In that moment, all the anger and shame I'd been nursing found a single target. The nerve of him, expecting me to lie, to cover for him, the man who slept with my wife in my own home. I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I said nothing. I just shut the truck door with a heavy slam and turned the engine on. "Mike, please," he pleaded, stepping back as I revved the engine. "Say something." But I didn't. I pulled out of the parking lot, leaving him standing there, his expression a mix of desperation and panic. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Justin Cooper needed an alibi, but he wasn't getting it from me. Let him squirm. Let him fall. I was done being the nice guy who'd let everyone trample over him. The rupture. When word reached Kathy that I'd refused to vouch for Justin, she confronted me about it in the kitchen. "You have to say something, Mike," she insisted. "They're dragging my name into this. People at work are talking. They think I was involved in his business scam. This could ruin my career." I stood by the sink, arms folded, letting the water run. "You want me to lie to protect him? Protect you? After everything?" She pressed her lips together, tears threatening to spill. "Mike, I'm just asking for mercy. For me." I shook my head slowly. "Mercy," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. Where was my mercy? Where was my support? "You told him. Only you are my support. Remember that." Her eyes flickered with pain. "I never meant for it to. You never meant for it to get this far, right? But it did." I let out a heavy breath, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. "I'm not lying for him. And if that means you get caught in the crossfire, then so be it." She stood there, shaking, trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, she turned and left the room, her footsteps echoing through the hall. I stayed in the kitchen for a long time, letting the faucet run until the water turned ice cold. I felt a pang of guilt. I still cared enough to hate seeing her suffer. But I was determined to see this through. If I had to burn the entire structure of our marriage to the ground to get some kind of justice, I was willing to do it. The DICTAPGONE, which brings me here, to this living room, pressing record on this old dictaphone that once belonged to my father. He used it to record his daily journals, a habit I found odd when I was a kid. Now, I wish I'd embraced it sooner. Something about speaking these words aloud, capturing them on tape, feels like a confession, an exorcism of all the torment inside me. It's late, and Buddy is stirring, sensing my tension. I stroke his fur absently, still speaking into the tiny microphone. I never planned on leaving these words behind. I say, echoing the lines I've scribbled in my notes. "But your voice betrayed us first, Kathy. You told him, 'Only you are my support,' loud enough for half the town to hear, loud enough to bury my pride." I closed my eyes then, praying the darkness would shield me from what was to come. My voice catches. I swallow hard. "I was the one who urged you to taste freedom. I promised I could handle it. But I lied. And every day since, I felt something crack in me. I can't feel your hand without wincing, can't see your face without recalling how you lit up for him. Now, I'd let him fall. Traitor of a traitor. That's the only name I deserve." I pause, looking at the small pile of scribbled notes on the coffee table. My half-written letter is in there, too, along with the evidence I found on her phone. Printed screenshots. The ache in my chest deepens. "And I forgot your birthday last month." I continue, my voice breaking slightly. "You never forgot mine, or our anniversary, or the date I first said I loved you. You remember every wound, every slight. Maybe that's why this is all that's left of me. Because some pains never die, even when we do. I wonder if you'll forgive me now." I click the stop button and stare at the recorder. There's a sense of finality settling over me, like the calm after a storm. Facing the cold dawn the next morning, I wake early, the sky barely shifting from inky black to a dull gray. Kathy is in the kitchen, sipping coffee, her face pale, eyes puffy from crying. She glances up at me. And for a moment, we just look at each other. No words, no anger, just exhaustion. "We need to talk," she says, voice hoarse. "Yeah," I reply, sliding into the chair across from her. "We do." She hesitates, then pushes a small piece of paper toward me. It's a note, her scrawled handwriting, the edges crumpled from being folded and refolded. It's something I wrote. Like a Like a confession, I guess, or an apology. I pick it up, reading quickly. It's disjointed, emotional, referencing how she felt lonely, how she never meant to push me away, how she thought I turned cold. There's mention of Justin, how she felt alive with him at first, how it turned into a spiral she couldn't escape. She says she's sorry, that she wants me back, that she'd do anything to fix things. When I look up, she has tears in her eyes. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she whispers, but I'm asking for it. Because I love you, Mike. I do. I never stopped. My chest tightens. I can't form words. I feel pity, anger, longing, betrayal, all swirling in a storm. I reach out and place my hand on hers, more a reflex than a conscious choice. For a moment, we sit like that, two broken people trying to cling to the remnants of a life we once had. Finally, I speak. I can't just forget what happened. She nods, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know. And I don't know if we can ever get back to what we were. My voice trembles with the weight of the truth. I still have so much anger and hatred, not just for Justin, but for myself, because I let it happen. Kathy's free hand moves to cover her mouth as she stifles a sob. I'm sorry, she repeats, almost like a mantra. I let go of her hand and stand, the chair scraping the floor. I need time, maybe more time than you can give me. She doesn't protest. We both know that any attempt at pretending again would be a lie so fragile it would crumble at the slightest pressure. XII. Revenge complete. Justin's case gets worse. With no alibi, he's caught in a legal mess that threatens to destroy his reputation and drain his finances. The local news even picks it up, painting him as a shady consultant who manipulated numbers to secure bigger commissions. I hear the rumors around town, see his name mentioned in articles online. Part of me revels in it, because this is the man who thought he could steal my wife, and then come begging for protection. Let him rot. Kathy, of course, is not untouched. The gossip at her school is vicious. Some people suspect she was involved in Justin's unethical deals, though no evidence supports that. Others whisper about her relationship with him, turning her personal disgrace into a public spectacle. She comes home looking drained, eyes hollow. Sometimes she locks herself in the bathroom for half an hour, and I can hear her crying through the door. Is that the revenge I wanted? To see her broken, to see him ruined? I'm not sure. All I know is that in the quiet of night, when I lie awake staring at the ceiling, I feel no satisfaction. I feel emptier. I've exacted my pound of flesh, and all that's left me is a taste of ashes in my mouth. XIII. The final confrontation. Weeks later, Justin shows up at our doorstep. Kathy's out running errands, and I'm home alone, sorting through boxes in the garage. I hear the doorbell ring, and when I open it, there he is, Justin Cooper, looking gaunt, unshaven, desperation etched into his features. Mike, he says, voice cracking. Can we talk? I should slam the door in his face, but there's something in his expression, maybe shame, maybe regret, that makes me pause. I step outside, closing the door behind me. What do you want? I ask, crossing my arms. He runs a hand through his messy blonde hair. I messed up. I know that. I'm sorry, truly sorry. I never meant to ruin your marriage. I fell for Kathy, and I thought she felt the same. The mention of her name on his lips makes me clench my jaw. She did feel something. Congratulations, but you also managed to ruin your own life in the process. He exhales shakily. I did. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. I'd wanted you to know. I'm not a monster, just a fool. Something about his pleading tone sickens me. I consider telling him to get lost. But then I see the raw despair in his eyes, and I realize he's already paying his price. I've had my revenge. I let him twist in the wind, refused to protect him. This is the outcome he's left with. Without waiting for an answer, I walk back inside and shut the door. I don't even care if he's still standing there. Let him do what he wants. Knock again, scream, cry, it doesn't matter. My revenge is complete. I can't muster anything beyond mild pity. XIV. The final decision. That evening, Kathy and I sit down in the living room. Our first real conversation in weeks that isn't about groceries or bills. She clasps her hands in her lap. Mike, I need to know what we're doing. Are we staying together? Are we divorcing? We can't go on like this. Two strangers under the same roof. I stare at the floor, the pattern of the rug blurred by the tears I refuse to shed. I don't know, I say after a long pause. I want to hate you for what you did, but I can't shut off years of love. Part of me still hopes we can fix this. She looks up, her hazel eyes filled with a desperate kind of hope. I feel the same. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, moving away if we have to start fresh somewhere else. Whatever it takes. I let out a bitter laugh. Can we really outrun what happened in our own home? Kathy's voice trembles. Maybe not, but maybe we can learn to live with it. Heal from it. I rub my face, exhausted by the emotional roller coaster. Look, I say, unwilling to try counseling, if only so we can say we did everything we could. But you need to understand. It's going to take time. I might never trust you the way I did before. She nods, tears trailing down her cheeks. I understand. I deserve that. A heavy silence blankets us. Then, quietly, she stands, crosses the room, and sits beside me on the sofa. She reaches for my hand. This time, I don't pull away. I let our fingers intertwine, feeling how fragile and tentative this connection is. XV. Trying to heal. A month passes. We begin couples therapy with a local counselor who specializes in infidelity and marital crisis. The sessions are brutal, dredging up old resentments, illusions, and wounds we never properly addressed. Some nights, I come home from these sessions so drained I can barely speak. Kathy tries to be patient, tries to offer comfort without overstepping. One night, I break down completely. I punch a hole in the drywall, cursing God and fate, shouting about how I can't unsee the image of her with him in my bed. She sobs, telling me that she's sorry, that she hates herself for what she's done, that she wishes she could turn back time. Therapy teaches us that if we want to move forward, we have to let go of the past. But letting go feels impossible. So we keep going, session after session, each time peeling back a layer of pain, hoping to find something salvageable underneath. And slowly, we do find small bits of trust. I notice the sincerity in her efforts, how she's let me see her phone whenever I want, how she shares details of her day, how she's ended all contact with Justin, at least as far as I can tell. One day, we talk about the forgotten birthday. She reminds me how it hurt more than she expected. It wasn't just the date, she says. It was the symbol of how you'd given up on caring. I felt like I was alone. I say nothing, but I file that away as a reminder of the subtle ways two people can drift apart. XVY. EPs. 6 months later, we decide to move out of the old house. It's not a grand relocation, just another neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus. But it's a symbolic departure from the place that holds too many ghosts. We pack up boxes, each of us sorting through items that bear memories of better times. Buddy senses the change, wagging his tail excitedly at the bustle, even though he can't possibly understand the significance. On the last day in that house, I walk into the bedroom. The site of the worst moment of my life. The bed is stripped, the walls are bare, and the closet empty. In that emptiness, I feel a wave of intense emotion crash over me. I remember seeing them there, the sheet half-draped, her hair tousled, him looking startled. My fists clench at my sides. Then, just as quickly, a tear slips down my cheek. I don't even wipe it away. I whisper to the empty room, "I'm letting you go," as if speaking directly to the ghosts of that day. Then I turn and walk out, shutting the door behind me with a gentle click. XVYI. A fragile reconciliation. We settle into the new place. The walls still smell of fresh paint. The floors squeak in places, but it feels like a blank slate. Kathy and I try to rebuild. Some days, I look at her and remember the closeness we once shared. The evenings cooking together, the soft whispers in bed, the easy laughter over silly jokes. Other days, I'm seized by a flashback of her and Justin. My anger resurfaces, and I wrestle with the question of whether I'll ever truly forgive her. Kathy does her best to show me she's different now, more transparent, more attentive. She never stays late at work without calling me first. She deletes social media accounts that might connect her to Justin. She's also continuing therapy alone, working through her guilt, her loneliness, her reasons for betraying me. Sometimes, after her solo sessions, she emerges tearful and shaken. I do my best to console her, but it's awkward. We're both learning how to trust again. Bit by bit, we reclaim small intimacies, like cooking breakfast on Sunday mornings, walking buddy together, sharing the details of our day without fear or reservation. At night, she curls into my arms with a quiet plea in her eyes, and I hold her, letting the warmth of her body seep into mine. For those moments, we feel connected, but the scars remain. Sometimes, in the darkness, I still see images that scald me from the inside. The LATTRREADEA loaded. A full year after the affair, I finally gathered the courage to read the letter I wrote during the worst of my anguish. The one I left half finished. I asked Kathy to sit with me in the living room, and I hold the pages with trembling hands. Should I be worried? She asks, voice quivering. She knows it contains all my raw anger, all the pain she caused. Maybe, I admit, swallowing a lump in my throat. But I need you to hear this. And so I read. I read about the funeral parlor, about her words echoing in my head. I read about how I felt broken, how I believed we were doomed. I read about my guilt, my rage, my fantasies of revenge. I read the lines where I call myself a traitor of a traitor. I read the section about forgetting her birthday, about how I used that as a weapon to punish her. I read my final plea. I wonder if you'll forgive me now. By the time I'm done, my throat hurts. Kathy is quietly sobbing into her hands. I set the letter down on the coffee table and wait, my chest tight with dread. Finally, she lifts her face, tears streaking her cheeks. I do forgive you, she whispers. I forgive you for your anger, your revenge, for hating me. And I hope you can forgive me too. My eyes burn. I exhale a shaky breath. I'm trying. God knows I'm trying. She reaches for my hand, and I let her. We sit like that, in a hush filled with the hum of possibility. XOX. A LA stain wound. A ninyu a heho months pass, and life continues. Our relationship is still fragile, like a vase painstakingly glued back together. The cracks remain visible, but it can still hold water, still carry flowers. Neither of us wears rose-colored glasses anymore. We know we might never be the same couple we once were, but we've discovered that maybe we can still build something worthwhile from the rubble. One Sunday morning, I decide to go through the phone recordings on the dictaphone, transferring them onto my computer. Kathy sits beside me, helping label the files. We come across the one I recorded the night I poured out my rawest emotions. She bites her lip, glancing at me to see if I want to delete it. Instead, I press play. My recorded voice crackles through the speakers. I never planned on leaving these words behind, but your voice betrayed us first. It's surreal hearing that older version of myself, so steeped in bitterness. Kathy sniffles, wiping a tear. I pause the recording and gently close the laptop. I say softly, we've heard enough of that pain for one lifetime. She nods, placing a hand over mine. Yes, let's look forward. I pull her into a hug. It's not a fairy tale ending. There's no guarantee we won't falter. But for the first time in what feels like forever, I have the faintest sense of hope. Maybe healing is like a slow sunrise. You wait in the darkness, unsure if the light will ever come. And then, gradually, it dawns. XX. The final really is not too long after. We receive news that Justin Cooper's legal situation resolved through a plea deal. He's left Ohio for parts unknown, drifting away like a bad dream. Kathy and I never talk about him anymore, unless it's in a therapy session where we dissect the roots of betrayal. Outside of that, he's a ghost of our past, a cautionary tale of what can happen when two people who should have leaned on each other turn outward instead. As for me, I still grapple with guilt. The sense that I might have driven Kathy away before she ever turned to him. But therapy has helped me see that it wasn't all on me. She had her own choices, her own reasons. And at last, I can own my role without drowning in shame. Late one evening after a long day, I walk into the living room. The lights are dim, and Kathy is curled up on the couch reading a book. She looks up when I enter, offers me a small tentative smile that speaks volumes. I sit beside her, and we share a quiet moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, she sets the book aside and reaches for my hand. "Mike," she says, voice soft but steady, "do you think we can keep going like this? Building, little by little?" I squeeze her hand gently, a lump in my throat. "Yeah," I manage, nodding. "I think we can." And in that simple exchange, I realize that while the scars of betrayal will never fully vanish, neither will the possibility of rebuilding. We won't be the same two people who fell in love years ago, but maybe we can be something else. Wiser, rawer, more painfully aware of our own failings, yet still willing to share a life. At times, I remember how I let Justin fall, how I refused him an alibi. It felt good for a moment, a surge of power in the midst of my powerlessness. But that vengeance cost me more pieces of my soul than I care to admit. Now I'm trying to gather those shards, fit them back together. It's not easy work. Still, I breathe a little easier each day, and Kathy stands beside me, determined to mend what she broke. I don't know if she'll ever truly forgive herself. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust again. But for now, we have enough to keep going. And that's more than I expected. I stare at the dictaphone resting on the shelf, a relic of that tumultuous year of our lives. One day I'll press play again, listen to the raw confessions, the anger, the heartbreak. But not today. Today, I choose to let the quiet of our living room hold me in its gentle arms. There will be new fears, new challenges. But maybe, just maybe, we can face them together, with open eyes and hearts that bear the scars of betrayal, yet still dare to beat in unison. I take Kathy's hand, and we head upstairs to bed, side by side, uncertain but hopeful, enveloped by the hush of a house where we're determined to make new memories. And as we drift off to sleep, I whisper a silent prayer that in the end, even if the pain never fully fades, we'll find a way to forgive each other and ourselves.